This is Andrea Albright, and you're watching the Break It Down show.
Yesterday, we had Nicole Rodriguez on, and you guys worked together. We were just talking off mic about this, but you guys are both authors. You both have the title "Boss" in your book. Your book is called "Visionary Boss: The Next Edge Entrepreneur." I'll put that in the show notes for anybody who's looking for that and wanting to get to know Andrea a little bit. I guess because your path is so unique, and I don't want to say wiggly or circuitous, but you've done so many different things. Can we just for a moment do a little bio just so folks can be like, what the hell? So can you give us kind of background on where you've been and where you're at now? And we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Well, I wrote my first book in health and fitness back in 2006. And so many people told me you can never compete in the fitness industry. It's way too competitive. You're competing with people with millions of dollars of advertising spends and all the pharmaceutical companies. And I just said, well, if I can help one person, then it's worth it. And so I started to learn internet marketing, and this thing called YouTube came along, and it was like, what's YouTube? And so I was part of the social media revolution back in 2006, 2007, and I learned internet marketing. Eventually I got to the front page of Google for words in my audience. And what I learned is that when you can apply a marketing message to publishing your own book, now your book actually reaches the market. Eventually, I created over 10 million views on YouTube, 100,000 Facebook fans, and I was on the cover of Women's Health and Fitness magazine, which is the #1 magazine in the fitness industry. And they said, you are more than an influencer, you're a thought leader because you are writing books that are changing the paradigm of fitness. So I created my own authority in the most competitive industry on the internet.
Yeah, in a marketplace where you were told it was too busy and too crowded. Okay, so that's all well and good. Is it still possible to do that, do you think? Like in that space or other similar spaces where I mean, look at the podcast space, for example, right? 1.5 and climbing every single second million podcasts. When do you go, you know what, it's just not worth it. Let me find some other aspect or some other niche or something else to dive into?
Well, I love competition. I believe competition means there's a hungry market. That means there are people who are succeeding, which is why there are so many people who are doing this. And I always say, there's always room for the best. So in even the most competitive markets, you will always make room for the best. So now it becomes about the quality of your message, the quality of your service, and how aligned you are with serving the market. Because if they're seeking information, that shows you that they are hungry and they're looking for solutions.
So a little bit of competition is fine. It means that there's room in the marketplace to stand out. How do you? I mean, we'll just use my show again as an example. You know, I've learned that you don't write for the audience; you write for SEO first, so that you're discoverable. That discoverable thing you talked about earlier. It's like, great, you've got the world's best content. If no one can find it, if it's never recommended, it is impossible to get up that mountain. So as much as we all want to be artists and focus on that thing, you absolutely have to figure out how to be discoverable.
Yes, exactly. So I learned keyword marketing, I learned video marketing, and I went after the most competitive keywords like weight loss secret and exercises to lose weight. And while people were spending millions of dollars for advertising, because my content had the most thumbs up, I got the front page of Google for those words. And so now we apply the science of internet marketing and understanding what your audience is typing into their search engine, combined with serving the audience with the best content, understanding them, and really meeting them where they're at.
Let's dig in right here because this is such an important thing. Again, we'll use my podcast as the example just to keep it off everybody else's back. But I have these guys from Macedonia that helped me produce the show, Dragon and Damien. And so when I'm talking to Dragon, he speaks English. And, there's some English translation things that we might have to fix just to get the nuances right. But I'm like, do not be clever. It's not about clever. It's not about those things. Like, you have to put the right words into the title. So if you were going to title this episode in terms of SEO purposes, what would you title this episode?
Well, we're not quite done with the episode yet, so I'm not really sure what the overall message is going to be. But if it's something along the lines of stand out in a crowded market, get to the top of Google, I mean, those would be great titles so far.
Yes. Right. Yeah. Getting to the top of the Google search, and then your name, and then bam. Now, because literally what you're trying to do is you're trying to in your brain predict what question they're going to ask, Google, or in my case, Bing. I never use Google. I always use Bing. But yeah, that question, like, how do I get on the first page? How do I get to the top of the page on Google? Right. And then this show comes up because it's a resource and Google's like, well, this is exactly the answer to your question.
Exactly. And so it's like putting your content on a billboard that has millions and millions of people driving down the superhighway versus artists and experts who are trying to be clever. They're putting their message up on a dirt road that maybe 2 or 3 people will go down in their lifetime. And they're wondering why they're not making the impact that they want to make with their message.
Yeah, I love this. We both live in Southern California, and I can't imagine what a billboard costs on the 405. And I can't tell you off the top of my head any one of them like in their message. Can you think of a single current billboard on the 405 right now?
I love iPhone billboards. I think iPhones have fantastic marketing and branding, and I see that they place themselves on very high traffic freeways around Los Angeles. So it's one of those positioning as well as understanding the audience, because the people who are going to be driving on that freeway are most likely going to be professionals, entrepreneurs, a lot of techpreneurs around Southern California. And so they always capture me, and I think, wow, that's perfect placement and positioning of your brand in front of your target audience.
I thought of one. That's that Chinese dance show, Shin Yung. That I even know how to say it because they say it on the radio ads.
There you go.
But yeah, you're right. That if you capture it, if you get it right, but it must cost. Let's just say it costs $25,000 a month, and I don't know what it is, but it's not much less than that, and it easily could be more. But to do that on the information highway is different. I mean, you literally can outsmart your competition, and then when you can't, you can bid for a relatively, compared to $25,000 for a billboard, for a relatively small amount of money, you can outthink, and then put a little bit of money in, and you can have that kind of, 10x that kind of traffic, really.
Absolutely. And this is also where we're moving into the conversation around branding. And so marketing and branding are 2 different conversations, but they have to be aligned and in synergy. Because what happens today is, say somebody sees an ad or a billboard, the first thing they do is they now go and search you. They go and look on your social media, they look at who you are, and if your brand is not consistent, then they aren't going to trust that that marketing message is actually the truth. People are becoming more and more sophisticated today because we have these tools on our smartphones. And so nobody trusts what you say in an ad. You have to build a brand. I say the brand is the promise that you make to your audience. And while a marketing message can be a hook, a title, a keyword that delivers value, that is like the initial attraction. When you think someone's attractive, it's like, ooh, you're cute. But then you want to find out more about them. Are they really who they say they are? And so a lot of entrepreneurs invest all this money in ads and Facebook ads and getting their message out there, YouTube ads, but they don't understand how to build a brand. And this is really where Women's Health and Fitness recognized that I have a solid brand in health and fitness. I've never done gimmicks. I've never gone after quick fix or fad diets. And so the integrity of your face, your name, your message, you have to invest if you truly want to be an authority brand. And what happens over time is that no one is playing this game. Everyone is looking for the quick fix, the diet pill. I'm now a publisher and everybody wants the Amazon bestseller status. Well, that's all a gimmick. And so if you're attaching yourself to these gimmicks, you'll never build a solid brand. And that's why people won't trust you.
Let's slow down right here. This is such a big thing. If not everybody is aware, most of us, many of us know that Amazon bestseller status is largely hocus pocus. It doesn't mean, like, there's a pattern, there's a path. You do these things and then you can be a multi-category bestseller. It doesn't have the weight of being a New York Times top 10 bestseller. Is that valuable though? I mean, is it like to be able to say I'm a bestseller and then just leave it at that and not, it's like saying you're an actor, right? In Hollywood. Like whenever I say, oh yeah, this person's an actor. And then I have to go, like a real one. Like they don't do commercials. They just do movies. Like you have to categorize. You're like, in reality, if you're an actor, you're an actor, but there's all these different levels. Help me understand that bestseller practice and what you think, how valuable it is.
Well, back in 2008, it was a big deal to be an Amazon bestseller, right? But we now know that marketers have just been using this as a gimmick. And if you are aligning yourself with this gimmick, even Amazon is going to be cracking down on this because it doesn't mean anything. When everyone is a bestseller, it no longer has any credibility. And so maybe back in 2010 when people first learned, wow, I can do this. But all it is putting yourself in a category that's very obscure. Not many people are competing, then selling your book for 99 cents and having everybody at the seminar go and buy your book at the same time. And you're maybe a bestseller for 30 seconds. Then you screenshot it and now you're trying to build an entire brand and business around a gimmick. I've even had people come to me because I'm a publisher and they say, I'm a bestseller. Now I have to go and write my book. So they go and they get the bestseller status before they even write their book. And for me, it's like, how is this even possible? This is your brand. You've invested 10 to 15 or 20 years into your career. Why would you attach yourself to a diet pill or a gimmick? And I want to get this word out there because I see so many heart-centered, smart people that don't realize that these are marketing gimmicks that people have figured out how to game the system. And publishers know the truth and media knows the truth. So you're never going to be an entrepreneur contributor if you're saying, I'm a best-selling Amazon. It doesn't make sense. And so really you want to play the game authentically with integrity. And the way to become a bestseller, like you said, New York Times, USA Today, Wall Street Journal. Those are the three that are credible. And it requires an audience. You need an audience. And if you're trying to pretend that you have something that's not truly aligned with who you are, people will see through that. And so it's about authenticity. Let's just write a great book. Let's just serve our audience. I mean, why did that go out of style?
Why indeed? You said another powerful word that I love to dig into and get your thoughts on this. One of the things I'm known for is being straightforward and honest. I'm a combat guy, so I tend to not unvarnish truth, just like the truth. And I'll say, this is going to sting, but I promise you can take it. Bam, the truth. That's how I soften it up. And that makes me authentic because when I read something that I wrote 10 years ago, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like something I would say. That's that authenticity. It appears that authenticity has become a bit of a buzzword. It's like, you have to be authentic. No. Like either you are or you aren't authentic. I mean, that's just kind of how I take that. But it's easy to say I'm going to be authentic with myself. But you have to know what that means. You have to know who you are. What would your advice be to someone who's trying to determine how to become authentic?
Well, that's an interesting conversation to look at it like this. Because when we are taking on a facade or an image that's not true, it takes so much energy to keep that going. And this is why entrepreneurs are getting burnt out. This is why you're not attracting your ideal client or customer who ends up being dissatisfied or, not getting the results because you aren't presenting the truth of what you do, how you do it, and who you are. And everybody says, "Oh, I want to help everybody and I can do everything for everybody." And so they begin to build up these false personas. And so it's exhausting. It will suck your energy and it will attract the wrong people who are only going to create more chaos and more frustration in your life. So when you become authentically aligned with who you are, it isn't about who do you want to work with. It's the 99.99% of people who are not right for you. And being so aligned with, here's what I do, here's how I do it, here are the results that I can create for this person who is ready. And when you truly believe that, you're not saying I can help everybody. And then when you do find that 0.001% and you say, I am authentically making you an offer that will change your life, they will feel it. And so authenticity is not only a great way to live because you don't have to spend all that time and energy putting into something you're not, but it also aligns you with the audience and your target market who you can truly serve.
Let me push you on this because this is an interesting part of this conversation. We often, and I'm going to point my finger squarely at marketers, we often shape words and messages, and that I think plugs a hole in the bottom of your authenticity bucket, right? I mean, yes, you're saying these things, but you're trying to find the right thing to influence rather than finding the authentic thing. And there's a price there. And I'm not saying it's bad to shape and create messages that are sticky, but there is a cost in terms of authenticity at times. I mean, we've all been told things. You're like, yeah, I don't, I see you spinning this message. Just give me the damn message straight,
Well, so marketing is a science and an art, and the delivery of that product and the promise you make is also a science and an art. I separate them. And it doesn't mean that if you're a great marketer that you're going to have integrity with the product and the service. It also doesn't mean that if you have integrity with your product and service that you're going to be a great marketer. They are two different conversations. There are two different skill sets. And so this is why when I lead with, I've been doing this since 2006. I lead with that because I want you to know that, yes, I am a great marketer and I also have integrity with my product and service. Most marketers burn themselves out. They burn their reputation. They, end up having the SEC come after them, which is what's happening. Okay. I mean, it's all coming. It only lasts maybe 5 years, until all the lights come on, and then they have to, go and recreate themselves, and then they'll have a comeback. But the point is that they never get to global thought leadership. They may be successful in the marketing world, in the internet marketing world. And, that industry, it's like the emperor has no clothes. No one wants to admit that you can't be on Forbes. Why aren't you a contributor for Entrepreneur Magazine? Why aren't you on the Today Show or on the cover of Women's Health and Fitness in the world of the fitness industry? It's because the world of media, if they truly have a global media presence, they know that those are all just gimmicks that are being recycled like a pyramid scheme. And so if you're in the world of internet marketing, you think that's the only world out there, but actually there's a whole other world, which is called true, authentic thought leadership.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This is great. And I love that look, this is the thought leadership right here, like the stuff you're saying, because there is so much of that, like this whole, and listen, we all do these things, but the fake it till you make it, if everybody's faking it, like nobody makes it. So if we talk to 2006 version of you. Or if not you, let's talk to the person who's like, I'm going to market myself as a thought leader. And they have 10, 15 years. What if you don't have that? What if you're not sure if you have that thought leadership? What if, how do you establish these things? You are authentic, but you don't know how to be authentic. All of these things when you're getting started, it can be a lot. I mean, think about, and you talk to writers all the time. I'm writing something right now, and I had to send it to an author friend of mine. And I'm like, look, I'm sending you this for your feedback, but also because I have to do a sanity check. Like, is this any good? And I know it's good, but you have to convince me that it's good because writing things is hard, right? If you're pouring your ideas and your thoughts out, talk about this whole concept of how do you get your foothold in the authenticity, in the thought leadership. I mean, nothing's more boring than a 22-year-old fitness expert. It's like, come on. You look great. You look great. I'm glad you're barely wearing any clothes on Instagram. However, come on.
Well, this is a great conversation. This is so much fun. So a couple things there, first of all. So I have a degree in biology. I was going to be a doctor. That's why I decided to start writing books that help people. And I also used to be overweight. And so I struggled with my own identity and myself. I wanted to help women to love their bodies. And so that was my motivation for writing that first book. And when you ask about before I get into building the authenticity, when you asked your writer friend to critique your writing, I would tell you that's the worst thing you could do, because that writer friend is not going to buy your book, nor is it going to be a person who will follow you forever. So you actually only want to connect with your raving fans, the people you are here to serve. Everybody has an opinion. I say they're like belly buttons, okay? Everybody's got a belly button, and the worst thing that writers and artists do is they ask for everybody's opinion. It's like, no, the only person who matters is the person who's going to buy your book and who you are writing the book to change their life. Tune everybody else out. And that includes the self-doubt in your head. You have to get that critic in check in your own mind, because it's not about you. It's about the person you're here to serve. So align with that message. Put your message out to the market and listen to the people you're here to help. That would be the first thing I would say. Building an authentic brand, yes, it's competitive. There's all kinds of tricks and gimmicks and ads and websites. The credible way is to be an author. It has been since history. That literally means we wrote it down. There's prehistory before it was written, and there's history. It was written down. And so our society, our culture sees authors as the authorities. That's literally where the word authority comes from. It comes from the word author. And so my mentor told me, if you want to stand out in the fitness industry, you have to write a book. You have to become an author, because that's what makes me an authority. Is the minute I say, I've written the book on this subject, we know what it takes to put your thoughts together, to devote the time and energy into writing and publishing that book. And books still have the highest level of credibility in our society. When you move, you have all these books and you're like, what am I going to do with all the books? You don't throw them away. You move them from place to place to place. It's because books have value. We know that books are the way that we share wisdom. And if you go back to the history of the printing press, it was the Gutenberg press, which got us out of the dark ages. And so we're literally talking about the age of enlightenment. And even in the world of digital information, a book holds the highest level status. And so the minute you become an author on the subject, now you have the authority so that you can send people to when you're buying those Facebook ads and putting out YouTube videos. If I didn't have over 25 books in health and fitness, Women's Health and Fitness magazine never would have put me on their cover. It is about writing books, publishing books, and sharing your ideas. That's what thought leaders do.
Can I add to that? I'm going to add to that.
Yeah, go for it.
By having 25 books, it means you're not out of ideas. You're not going to be out of ideas. You are setting the market. This is one of the things we learned about along the way too with the show. And I wanted to get into your experience in dealing with entrepreneurs because there's so much wisdom to be gathered. And I want to hear about that as well. But that ability, okay, so you can sit down and you can put in the time and you can write a book, which means you learn how to sell a book. Because if you're not salesperson of the year of your own book, nobody else is. It's like you've got to do this. And then it's like, well, what are you going to write next? Whether it's op-eds and you get paid or whatever that you are now a writer, and writers that get paid write. And you can lean on a book for a while. And by the way, I wanted to add this too. In terms of Amazon for credibility, one of the things I look at is how many reviews do they have? If you've got 2,500 reviews, you've got a book that people care enough about to review it. And that means that there's something there that separates you from just like, I'm 15 category Amazon bestseller. So let's talk a little bit about some of the wisdom you've gathered from the entrepreneurs that you work with. You talked about your mentor and everything, but also the other aspect of not running out of ideas and how you keep that well filled up.
Okay, gosh, every time we get into a subject, it's like, oh, there's 5 things we want to add. So yes. One thing about the Amazon reviews, that's another way that people can use the gimmick. You can buy those reviews. And so right. I actually look at, is this person being interviewed by media? So for instance, my latest book, I published it in August, and within 60 days, I became a contributor for Entrepreneur Magazine. So that is the largest platform for entrepreneurship. I promise you, not once did they say, how many Amazon reviews do you have?
All right,
okay.
All right, I'm corrected. Good.
Yes. So remember, this is why the internet marketing world wants us to focus on these things that can be bought. So true credibility is about the media is interviewing you. You are a thought leader. You are sharing your ideas on platforms that are distributed around the world, period. That's it. So now you're asking about entrepreneurs and how the book can serve the entrepreneur. Right. So the book is more than just a business card. I hear a lot of people say that, oh, it's a new business card. Yes, you want a business card that makes you stand out, but it's also a commercial. The book is the new commercial. No one watches commercials anymore. We fast forward through them or we skip. But when someone hands you a book that is delivered to your exact problem, pain, and where you're seeking a solution, you give that book your undivided attention. And so inside of the book, we are able to develop a relationship, we build rapport, and we give the reader a transformation. There's nothing else that can deliver that kind of intimacy and that kind of interaction. And so this is why authors have raving fans, loyal followers. And so if you're just thinking of your book as a business card, or a lot of people are just, rushing through it just to get that Amazon bestseller, you're missing the most valuable opportunity you have to build a relationship with your audience. And so the book, I say if you're truly a thought leader, you need to publish once a year. People who stand up on stages and they talk about the books they published 5 years ago, it's like, you haven't had any new thoughts since then? So a true thought leader, just like you said, we never run out of thoughts. I'm also not afraid of people stealing my thoughts. That's what people do. When you're a thought leader, you are evolving the conversation. And so by trusting, there will always be more thoughts because you're on the cutting edge, what I call the next edge. You're never done. And so I just released my 26th book. I'm a thought leader. I will never be done publishing because that's what thought leaders do.
Yeah, they lead through thoughts and they guide us towards where we're going. Yeah, it's fantastic. Let's get into some of the wisdom you've gathered though from your experiences and mentoring and advising and talking to entrepreneurs. I mean, there's so much experiential knowledge there that you're able to process without siloing. Like, when I talk to CEOs, they're very passionate about their thing, and they're brilliant, but folks like us that get to hop around silos, we get to gather this stuff and say, this is the common thread. This is the lever you need to pull. So what are some of those things you've gathered and taught yourself?
Gosh, well, I wrote a whole book on it. So, my first book on entrepreneurship is my 17-year journey as an entrepreneur. And obviously, I've learned a lot. I say it's been the greatest personal development and spiritual path I could ever have because business doesn't lie. Business is numbers. And it'd be easy to be up on a mountain or be at some spiritual retreat and say, oh, I'm aligned with my purpose and my dharma and I'm of service. But when you're truly in the business world, it's a direct reflection of, am I creating value for others? And they exchange that value in the form of money. And so it's something we can measure. And I believe that entrepreneurs, whether we like it or not, we are smack dab in the middle of a revolution, and we are being called to leadership. We're being called to authentic leadership, integrity, and most of all, when you have a vision and a message for humanity, you cannot sit on it. People are saying, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I'm not ready. Well, it has nothing to do with you. The message chose you. You need to share that message with humanity. We are less than 5% of the population. Entrepreneurs are very rare, and we are very misunderstood. I've been misunderstood my whole life. I've been told I'm crazy. I need stability. I can't, what are you doing? Who do you think you are, taking on the fitness world and becoming a publisher, and now you're disrupting the publishing industry? It's like, who are you? Where did you get this, ego from? But now I'm a genius. Everybody's telling me how smart I am because I was part of the digital revolution before this all happened. And so the key is you have to trust your vision. The world will tell you you're crazy because they don't see it. We see the future. We see the possibilities for humanity. And so my book is Visionary Boss, and how to connect with that vision that's coming through you and make sure you stay committed to it. Because I see so many entrepreneurs who give up, who self-sabotage, they turn to addiction, they turn to destructive behavior. It's because they are denying the truth that they're a visionary. And so I want you to embrace the vision that's coming through you.
No, that's great. And everybody should look on the screen if you're on the live side or watching the video later on. There's Andrea's book in Amazon form. So help out the show, help out her by buying the book. It's called Visionary Boss, The Next Edge Entrepreneur. Yeah, that we talked to a lot of musicians on the show, and a lot of them have this blessing / curse. And this goes to the addiction part of things, where the music just comes in a stream and they've got to do something with it, and sometimes to turn it off, they medicate, or to deal with this thing. It's like you're constantly like, this is a song, here's a song, but most of the songs you write don't stick. They don't do anything. So you've got all this negative feedback in your gift, right? And so they have to sort out, and the ones that last a long time, they sort it out, they figure it out, and it always has fitness involved. Like you see Bruce Springsteen at 70 years old and Sammy Hagar, you think those guys are, in a bar drinking and smoking. No, those guys are fitness nuts. They know what it takes to manage a career, to deal with that. And this is, I think, is the same thing with the serial entrepreneur. I've talked to a lot of people as well that they always have another idea. They're always trying to work on the company they're in, but they're thinking ahead. How do I get this next thing out? I'm desperate to do this next project. I want to get this company started and either hand it off to somebody to run or sell it so I can do this again. And that's that serial entrepreneur thing that everybody claims to be on LinkedIn, but you're like, you've started half a company. It's like, you got to get a little further past that in terms of your bona fides that you have to do this. But talk a little bit about that idea. How do you, if you think you have a lot of ideas, obviously you have to write, you said that, but how do you foster that channel where it goes in the brain and out into a product, whether it's even a blog, some kind of way to get it out?
Well, the creative impulse for an entrepreneur is everything. I believe that's really why I learned business is to protect my artistic expression. I'm actually more artistic than I am business, but I realized I don't want anyone to ever tell me what to say. I don't want to compromise my message. I don't want to have to take on a sponsorship that I don't believe in. And so I have to learn business in order to make sure my art stays pure and protected. And I'm so grateful that I did, because I am my own boss. No one owns me. No one owns my message, and I'm able to create value by expressing my highest version of myself. And a lot of artists, they dismiss the idea of business and they think of it as lowering their standards. But I want to empower artists to say, if you learn how to create value for humanity, that really is what business is. And business 101, find a need and fill it. If it's just about your creative expression, then you'll always be starving or searching or having to lower the quality in order to get a gig. So how can you align creating value for humanity and packaging it in a way that people will receive that value, and then aligning your artistic creative expression through that? So as you mentioned, yes, writing for me, that's my expression. I'm already on to my next book. I will never be done writing. That is the way that I express that. I also use fashion as a form of expression. So if I'm just about business, then I believe I'd be too masculine. That's just too much of that like logic, masculine energy. And so I create a ritual around my fashion and my beauty rituals. And so that to me, again, is also artistic expression. And so you find ways to get that juice that you're here to create. You are a creator, and that's magnificent. And so how can you channel that creativity in productive ways that serve humanity, serve yourself, and serve others?
What if you're a mom and you just want to write a book and see what happens? Is that okay?
Absolutely. I believe that writing for the purpose of writing is a beautiful, I've written more than anything I will ever publish. You know, for every book I publish, I write for my own self, 5 books, because it's like, what's the word? It's like a filter, right? So you have to filter it through, you have to process through it, and then you pick the words that say, okay, this is what I want to publish. This is what I want to share with the world. But if you're an artist, if you're a singer, you have to sing. If you're a writer, you have to write. You can never stop that, because that's what gives you the juice. That's what keeps you connected to the flow state, and that's what keeps you out of the addictions.
I've got a guitar right here over my shoulder, that I've been trying to pick up and play more. I believe I'm a bit of a failed singer, and all these different things, expressions, forms, like just whatever it is, right? I'm writing a little bit, everything. But the thing that I do every day, sometimes several times a day, is have these conversations, right? I'm an interviewer. When I was in combat, my job as a spy was to talk to people and really conduct interviews. It's the same thing. And so when I look back over the last 20 plus years of my professional career, gosh, 30 years, really, I'm being honest, it's these conversations, right? That's why I have the show. That's why people resonate with it. That's why I don't start by just asking you, normally I don't even ask the bio question at all, but I was struck by how interesting your bio was. I wanted to share that with the audience. But my job is not to ask you the same question you've been asked 1,000 times on 100 different shows, let's get to this thing. But that doesn't mean I don't want to learn how to sing better and play my guitar. And I write a haiku, even if it's bad, for every single episode, so
Amazing.
What if you're not sure what your voice is, and you're trying to, be multimedia with your art?
Well, one of my favorite authors alive today, her name's Elizabeth Lesser, and she's an amazing writer. She's been influential to me. And one of the things she says is, everybody's talking about your passion and follow your passion and all of that. Oh, I misquote. It's Elizabeth Gilbert. Elizabeth Lesser is another. So Elizabeth Gilbert. And she says, everybody wants to follow their passion. But then that's a lot of pressure because you're like, oh, well, I mean, I've got a lot of passions, or maybe I'm not really so passionate about one. I mean, why do I have to choose a passion? And it can be a lot of like self-doubt that's inflicted around that. And so she says, follow your curiosity, which I think is a beautiful way of saying, what are you curious about? You know, that exploration, that interest. Where are you curious? And that curiosity can lead you down one road, or it can lead you down an entire lifetime. But I'm always curious. I stay open to curiosity. I'm an insatiable learner. I'm an explorer. I'm a seeker. You know, I read a book a month. I'm a speed reader, not to mention all the books I'm publishing, and I get to be totally engaged in these authors' subjects. And to me, that's the zest of life. You know, that's the passion. If someone were to ask, what's your passion? It's like, I'm just passionate about life. I'm passionate about all the opportunities we have as human beings to follow our interests and our curiosity.
No, I love it. And this exploration of life, you know, I had on Mark Victor Hansen the other day. He wrote the Chicken Soup books. His wife, Crystal, too, who's fantastic. And we were talking about a lot of different things. And actually, Nicole and I talked about this yesterday. Like, if you make a to-do list, cross things off, of course, but also don't forget you did those things. And to do 7 things as an adult, like one of the things I have to do today has nothing to do with anything other than contributing to the household's well-being. You know, whether it's change that damn light I've been trying to, you know, these things count, and don't lose sight of that. But that ability to gather wonder, to gather awe, to find inspiration, and if that means picking up the guitar and playing with it, whatever it is, keep going back to those things that give you that input. I would submit to you that that is among the most important things you can do to really sort out who you are, or at least deflate the bad side and express yourself in a way, even if no one ever hears it. You know, and like, I play my guitar in my tent by myself. It's a therapy, you know, that vibration of playing, that act of playing, expressing myself. Like, how do I sing this song better? All of that expression and thought. It's good for the soul.
Absolutely. And you asked earlier about, you know, how would a mom busy with her kids, like how would she write a book? And I think that our culture tells us that we have to put our dreams on the back burner, that once the to-do list is done, then in our free time, we're going to create our dreams. Well, that never happens. You never end up creating your dreams. And so I say, prioritize your dreams. Make your dream the highest priority of the day. If it's 15 minutes, if it's an hour, you know, yes, wake up early or walk away and leave your kids with a neighbor. You know, there's got to be collaboration. I don't succeed on my own. I have a team. I have a mentor. I have a community of entrepreneurs who support me every day. And so these women and men, but especially women, we're told that we're supposed to take it on and take it on and take it on and do more. And so this superwoman, I mean, it's all just a facade, because you can never just keep taking on more and more and more and more and expect for your dreams to come true. So if you were to put 10 minutes or 20 minutes aside for yourself while your kids are napping, while your kids are entertained, you will be a better mom. You will be a better version of yourself. And this idea of self-care, once I'm finished with everybody else, we need to switch that in our society. We need to prioritize feed myself, feed my soul, feed my art, feed my expression, feed my fitness. Then I serve. You know, don't even give to others, because you're giving from a place of depletion, and that's creating negative attraction and guilt and all of that. So lead from abundance. Fill yourself up first.
I love it. I love it. This is such a great thing. I always like to say, no one takes longer to go to bed than the mom. You know, there's always something else to do. Like, I'm going to bed at 9, 12 o'clock, still not in bed. But you're right. You know, I'm 51 in a couple of weeks, and a lot of my friends that I grew up with, you know, the moms are trying to sort out who they are now that they've been a mom for, you know, 18 to 30 years. You know, like, now what do I do? Why do I matter? I mean, my whole life has been in my kids, and that is awesome. It's so much fun to watch a mom be a mom and just glow and light up and everything. But you're right, like being the example for your daughter, for your kids. Like, this is how you do this. And even if you're not able to do it, this is one of the areas where I love to talk about these points, like where the work really is. It's great to say, go grab your guitar and sing for an hour every day. And reality is what's possible right now. Where is the work at? Is it just simply getting your guitar and tuning it? And you're like, you know what? Tomorrow I'll try to play a song or whatever it is. Or I'll sit down with my friend Hilliard. He's a screenwriter in Hollywood. And he's like, if you have writer's block, write a word. Write 100 words, put that project down, grab something else, write that, go for a walk, come back, try to write a word, and just, you keep at it. And even if it's just if you wrote 100 words a day, it would take you 1,000 days to write a book, but you would write a book in 1,000 days. I mean, you would get it done, and it would be a big fat book. So talk a little bit about, how does one who's not sure where to start or how to get going again, how do you get unstuck? How do you find that point? Like, where is like the actual next footstep that needs to go? Don't tell me like you press send and you just do it. Like, way before that, when you're overwhelmed, when you want to quit. Here we come up on the first of the year. What do we do? Next step, next day, next action.
Yeah. Well, I meet a lot of people who are in writer's block. When they come to me, a lot of times they have half-written chapters on their computer hard drive. They've been working on their books for years. One of my clients had been working on his book for 17 years when he met me. And so here's the number one thing I tell people. I say you have to set a deadline. The deadline is absolutely essential, because if you never have a deadline, it will never get done. If you give yourself a year, it'll take a year. So I say 90 days. We commit to a 90-day deadline. This is also where the business structure, the business mentality around creativity is very effective, because you now know, okay, I have a deadline. You need to get commitment on that deadline. Tell everybody, if you have a publisher, that's great, because now you are both committed to that deadline. It's amazing what you can create when you know you're on a deadline. It's like whenever the moving truck is about to show up and you are like, oh, I've got days. And then it's like, oh my God, they're coming in 20 minutes. And somehow you get your entire room and house packed up. It's because you had a deadline. That moving truck is arriving at your doorstep. So artists need to create deadlines. This is going to actually bring forth the best of your creativity. The second part around writer's block is most people go into writer's block when they get overwhelmed. It's not the lack of ideas. It's too many ideas. It's too much going on in your head. And when they come and want to partner with me, typically they have 2 or 3 books in their head that they're trying to figure it all out, and then they want to cram it all into one book. So the first thing we do is we actually do outlines for 2 or 3 books. I say the easiest way to write one book is to know you're going to write a second book, because that allows you to move those ideas into the next book, and you can really get clear on, it's not that I'm trying to put everything into one book, which is a huge problem authors make, and that's why nobody picks up your book when it's 300 pages. So the average reader wants about 150 pages. They don't want to be overwhelmed. It's like having a meal. You can't eat everything at once. You have to be able to digest it. And so this first book, what's going to go in this first book, knowing that there's going to be a second book and even possibly a third. So just moving your ideas out into a space where you have time and expression to say, this is what I'm saying first. Then I create rituals around writing. So another thing, as I say, is never write your book by yourself. I have ghostwriters. I have ghostwriters on my team, my authors who come to me. Some of them love to write. Some of them never write a single word. You should never write your own book all by yourself. You will just go into overwhelm and confusion, and it's inevitable. It's just going to happen. And so by having commitment, having a team, having someone to work through those ideas, that keeps it in a dialogue. If you're in a monologue, you get stuck because you're the only one in the conversation. But just like you and I, we never run out of stuff to talk about because we're in a dialogue. And then the last piece is create rituals around writing. So I like to go to fancy hotels. I actually do it all around the world. I've traveled by myself through Europe. I go to beautiful hotels, and that's my thing. If I have a writing deadline, I put myself in a beautiful environment. I go to a hotel where I know I'm going to be there for 2 to 3 hours. People will be able to serve me, take care of me, and I'm surrounded by beauty. I get dressed up. I make it an experience. And I even kind of have like a role play of like, ooh, I'm a writer in a movie. And, it's like, do what you have to do to get yourself in that state. And I tell you, what I create in that time period is, it's magic. It's truly magic. And so that ritual around writing, it's like, ooh, I get to go write today. I've got 3 hours. Now I can go and I just get to create. And the last thing, when you are in the creative flow, do not edit yourself. So eliminate the delete button. The delete button does not exist. And this is what people do is they write and then they edit. They write and then they edit. And so it takes two different parts of your brain. The right brain is the creative part of your brain. If you're editing, you're jumping into the left part of the brain. So allow yourself to be creative in that flow state, and you don't even delete. You cannot delete. The next day or 2 days later, put on your editing hat, go into your left brain and clean it up. And so it's two different rituals around the creation and the editing. And people who are trying to do both at once are constantly stopping themselves. So that's how I've written over 26 books and more to come.
I love it. Yeah. I mean, it's like a master class on what to do, because you're right. That experience thing. I mean, whatever it is, if it's not fancy hotels, find that spot that inspires
nature.
you.
Yeah. Beauty, nature, something that for whatever it makes you want to be in a creative space.
I've been reading a lot of Laura Ingalls Wilder's books and things that are written about her, and it is just so inspirational. And one of the things I want to say is she's remembered in part because she was an excellent writer, but also her daughter was a world-class writer and editor and everything too. But because she wrote, like the pioneer story is not written that much, and a lot of that writing didn't survive. But she becomes the authority in part because she showed up and said, "Hey, I've got these stories," And if you look at what she did, it's almost like Seinfeld. Like she wrote about day-to-day life on a prairie or by a river, and it looks fascinating when you do. But again, she did it. And then the process of writing. So she would write these stories, and her and her daughter would have these letters, and they're like, I can't really use this in any of my books. It's never going to fit in. And so she would give it to her daughter and say, you use this in one of your books. And then she could fashion a whole story around this spare part because she was prolific, and it's just inspirational. It's like, just write it, get it out of your head, and then come back to it. You're right. And then edit or get more of it out of your head. And she would say, like, she'd go back 60, 70 years in time. And like, once she got into those memories, she's like, oh my God, I forgot about the blue dress, and these details would emerge and just bring all this richness to these stories that she's known for. And it's incredible what your brain will do when you allow it to get into that memory and then look around in the memory. Just, I got my eyes closed for everybody listening, and I'm looking around, and you look around, you're like, oh my God, I forgot. That stuff's in there a lot of times if you can manage to slow down and grab it and pull it out.
That's beautiful. You're making me even more inspired to write. And, and that's the key. When people are like, oh, I don't have anything to write about. It's like, well, be a fascinating person. Be fascinated by life. I mean, if I'm sitting here right now, I could find multiple things and perspectives to write about this situation right here. And so you can't just wait for the impetus to strike you. It's like, create it, live a fascinating life, be a fascinating person, choose to find beauty and inspiration everywhere. Because these muses, as the philosophers from the Greeks would write about, they are here waiting for you to say yes, and they will come and meet you. But if you're putting up all these barriers and obstacles, they're just looking over you and they're moving on to someone who is open and always willing. Another thing about when the muse strikes, one of my favorite writers, she said that she used to be working on a plane and a prairie, and this was back before typewriters. And if she would feel the inspiration coming, she said it sounded like thunder rolling across the prairie. And she would have to run back to her house and grab the pencil and write it as quickly as she could. And sometimes it would be almost gone and she'd have to grab it and by the tail, and it would come back backwards. She would write it backwards. And so that's also another example of how keep a journal, keep something with you all times, because you don't know when that muse is going to come. And I know when I feel it, when I get the chills, and it's like, ooh, I have to capture this. I have to get this. So be ready, because when you open up those channels, the muse will find you.
And I would say the muse will find you more often if you're super stoked about it showing up and that you do something with it.
Absolutely. It's just like, the universe, relationships, when you're in gratitude, when you are also an action taker, my fellow artists, it's about the action, right? You don't just have the talent, you have to apply the talent. And that is what is rewarded. It's the same thing with relationships, if whether it's your child or your partner, the more you are in gratitude and the more you are appreciative, and also the more you follow through on your word and your commitment, the more they want to give you, the deeper the relationship goes.
I would also say, don't be so precious with your talent. Let it be what it is. If you read the entire Harry Potter series, right? The books get better as she goes along. You can see it. You're like, oh, this book was fine and it was fun and it was light. But they get more, and they just get better. And you realize that here is maybe the most successful author of all time, one of them, if not. And you get to watch her learn in real time and get better and better at her craft. So don't feel like you have to put out the perfect manuscript, because I don't know an author that says that was the perfect book. They all say, I reached a point where I was done with it, and then I put it down and I got on to the next project. Because you can always edit, you can always change a word, but at some point, just get the damn thing out so you can get on to the next thing.
Yeah, well, this is where the ego gets involved again, right? Yes. So the way that I got my first book out, and it was in no way a well-written book or a perfect book, but in many ways that book actually helps more people, because it was my truth about my fitness journey to that point. And then I went so far and I ended up being on the cover of a magazine, but most humans can relate to that original book more than the books that I was writing 12 years later, because my journey went so far. And if I wouldn't have led little breadcrumbs of here's how you follow, here's the path you go down, and having those 25 books through my journey as a fitness expert, then no one would be able to meet me in the conversation that I'm in right now. And so the ego wants to tell you, oh, you're not good enough. And I was like, no one's going to read it except my mom. But the way that I got over it is I said, if I can help one person, then it's worth it. It's worth putting myself out there, being made fun of, ostracized, eliminated from the tribe, all the things that your subconscious is actually thinking is going to happen. But that's your ego. And procrastination disguises itself through perfectionism. Perfectionism is just a fancy way of saying I'm procrastinating, because you will never be perfect. You will never reach perfectionism. And it is only through the art of practice and being of service that you actually know what is the market wanting, what is good, what is well received. And so if you're sitting in a bubble trying to be perfect, like that one client who was writing his book for 17 years, we published him in 90 days. And so now he's out there serving his audience. He's getting feedback, and he's actually knows this is what works, this is what doesn't work, this is what the market wants to hear more of. But if you're trying to wait for the day that you're perfect, that's just your ego stopping you because you're afraid of rejection. So get over it. It's not about you. It's about the people you're meant to serve.
And let's be honest, your mom isn't reading your book. And probably your friends aren't. This is 100% true. Like everybody listening, my mom is not watching my show. She's watched it in the past, but if you rely on your friends and family to get you over the hump audience-wise, you will lose. Like it's way more important to find that person in, Raleigh, North Carolina, who you've never met. It's like, I love what you do, whether it's books, videos, podcasts, whatever it is. you have to find those people that you would never meet otherwise and have them go, don't you dare stop. One of my KPIs, one of my friends said this to me a couple weeks back, because it's hard to do this stuff. It's hard to, we're in the entertainment business, right? It's hard to lift a show up out of 1.5 million shows or whatever it is. And he said, I would trade places with you in a second. I'm desperate to do what you do, but I can't because I have this comfortable job and it won't let me create. Don't you dare quit. And it's like, what are you going to do? Right. Like, and you're like, you realize like, yep, it's hard. It's supposed to be hard. And I'm also incredibly fortunate to be able to do this. And I wasn't going to quit, but he was just like, give me that pep talk of like, you're doing it. You're on the path. You're so far down the road. You're killing it. Don't you dare quit. And so what I'm encouraging all of the people listening and watching to do is just take those steps so that you're like, you look back, you're like, I took 15 steps today, and be stoked about that. And then just keep going. Or no matter what. What would you want to say in closing, Andrea?
Wow, we've covered so much, Pete. This has really been a very in-depth, full spectrum conversation around creativity, entrepreneurship, business, marketing, all my favorite subjects. And when you just commit to being the best version of yourself and being of the highest level of service to the people you're here to serve, that eliminates so many obstacles. I've put myself out on the internet since 2006, and I will tell you, the people who I'm partnering with and attracting now are my dreams. My dreams are coming true. But if you aren't willing to just be who you are and be seen for what you have to share in the moment, then you will never get to the highest level in the industry. So just be willing to take the path, be willing to walk the steps. It may come tomorrow or it may take 10 years. But if you are truly aligned with your passion, if you are serving your purpose, people will feel that, and they will always be grateful for you, and there is always room for the best.
I love it. Everybody, first off, if you type in Andrea Albright on LinkedIn, you can connect with her there. The links will be in the show notes, but just in general, let's cover a couple of these things. Her book right now is Visionary Boss, The Next Entrepreneur. There are 25 other books that are out there, so on a variety of topics and thought leadership for sure. If you're interested in publishing, of course, BeverlyHillsPublishing.com. She'll help you get going on that. And then just in general, her website it's nice and simple, Andrea Albright. And all that stuff will be in the show notes. It's on the screen there if you're looking. Hey, thank you so much. I love these things that the new year's coming up. People want to turn a new page. And here we are saying, you can do it. Just turn the page. Start putting things on it, whether it's musical notes or fitness or whatever it is, just start doing it. And in particular, thank you what you do. You said something earlier about, encouraging women to create. And I'm all about like moms, like go out there and do it. It doesn't have to become your livelihood. Just do it for the sake of a very good friend of mine. I grew up with her. She paints rocks. And I'm like, you ever going to sell these things? She's like, I wouldn't dare. I get too much joy and pleasure from just taking these river rocks, and she paints these incredible little things on it. And I'm like, I never knew you were so artistic. And she said, I didn't know either, but they're wonderful. And so don't change, just find that thing and invest time into it and let it become what it needs to become. If it needs your full attention, it'll let you know.
Well, can I give away a free gift to your listeners and viewers? If you go to AndreaAlbright.com and enter your email address, I have a $100,000 book launch strategy for you. So you can get a complete checklist and strategy of how you can follow step by step how I launch my books and my clients' books who we publish, so that you can make $100,000 or more on your book launch. So that's AndreaAlbright.com.
That sounds like a pretty good deal. Give me a second here. So Andrea's offer, and then I'm gonna put that in the list so everybody can see that. If you're interested, there is the offer. And again, just go to Andrea's main site there, but that's the link to actually the button itself. But if you go to her website, you'll be able to find it. Hey, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Let's do it again the next time. Every time you have a book or something to say, come on the show and help us
I
all out.
would love to. Thank you, Pete. Thank you for what you are doing. And I agree. You are meant to do this. Keep going. You are a beautiful light to the world. You are so intelligent and so kind. I feel your heart, and it's been a pleasure to be on your show.
Don't stop. Keep going.
Yeah. He's like, how come we're just getting into this now?
I didn't know this show was going to be about all this. All right, stand by for a second. Let me sign off.